veteran's son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. We have all your action from Phoenix Raceway for the Can-Am 500, a special Veterans Day edition of the show, if you will. I would like to take this moment to thank all the veterans out there for their service to our nation, including my personal hero, Vietnam veteran Staff Sergeant Keith Williams. Thank you, Dad, for your service. Really appreciate it. And to all those other veterans out there, thank you guys for your service. The act that you do for our country is amazing, and I'm glad that we get to celebrate you guys this weekend. With that said, this is the last race before Homestead, and we have 3 drivers locked in: Kyle, Rowdy Busch, Kevin Harvick on wins, and Truex on points. The 4th spot is currently owned by Keselowski with a 19-point lead, who will start 16th. All 4 of the 4 cars behind him in points currently start in front of him for this race this weekend. Blaney, 22 points back, starts first. Hamlin starts second and is 19 points back. And Chase Elliott qualified 4th, but being 49 points back, pretty much has to get a win here to get into the next round of the playoffs, as well as his teammate Jimmy Johnson, Mr. 7X himself, who's starting 12th. With this situation, we should expect to see some craziness at the end of the stages, at lap 75 and at lap 150. And then we're going to see, kids, a whole lot of insanity come lap 312 at the finish.
Yeah, Chevy has dominated here in the desert. In the last 10 races, they've won 8 of those 10 races, with Ford winning the other 2. Toyota has not won here since 2012, and that was Denny Hamlin in the spring.
Temps should be in the mid-80s with cloudy skies when we go racing in the desert Sunday, November 12th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Just a reminder, kids, about the season-long NASCAR DFS league that we're trying to start. Remember, we want to make it season-long, DFS style, with points and salaries every week. We're going to try to do it on DraftKings, but we just need to get the information from you guys of how many of you guys are interested in playing. We're trying to set the buy-in level at $100, we think, and that'll be good for the whole season. We'll do weekly prizes as well as a season-long champion and try to get a season-long trophy out. So remember to let us know if you're interested in that. With that said, it's time to burn some rubber, Phoenix style perhaps. Liehr, I'm going to let you do some honors.
Burn rubber, baby!
All right, Liehr, that was a great burning rubber. Who do you have to burn some rubber for us this week, buddy?
Well, man, first and foremost, great week last week. It was awesome to watch that Texas race and see Kevin Harvick get the victory and make it into the playoff. So obviously, like we talked about in the intro, there's 1 spot left, and a handful of guys are vying for that final spot. And I'm actually going to be going with the guy that's pretty obvious here wearing the cap, but Kez obviously sits 4th in 19-point cushion over Denny Hamlin. This team has made a nice comeback, especially after last week where at Texas, when Rowdy got loose and went up into Kez and cut the front tire on the first lap, which put him basically 2 laps down at one point in that race. They came all the way back to finish 5th. This team needs a strong and steady race at Phoenix to contend, obviously, for the win if they want to move on to the playoffs. But he starts 16th this weekend, and with 16 starts, I don't know if that's a sign or not, but 16 starts, he has 0 wins, 5 top 5s, and 8 top 10s. He hasn't been a major leader as far as laps are concerned, with only 119 in his career here. But his cost is only $9,500 this week, and I like this car a lot this weekend. I think with the pressure on that number 2 team, that garage, that Penske garage is going to come together and get it done this weekend. And, you know, he may not be a big dominator as far as fantasy points go this weekend, but I definitely think when it comes to place differential guys, he's definitely going to be the driver this weekend. You're going to be able to fit a lot of big names if you've played around with your lineups already this week into your lineups. So I do think, you know, Brad has the most dominating performance, and I don't think he's going to lead that much of laps. But as far as a points perspective, I think he's definitely going to be an essential piece as far as a driver to put in your lineups that's going to get you enough points that he's going to be a must-own play. So I definitely think you need to have Keselowski on your lineups this weekend.
Yeah, man, I kind of wanted to fight you over this burning rubber pick. At 9,500, his track history leaves you wanting, but his starting position provides that place differential that you want. He's also in the same equipment that's, and basically the car with the same setup types as the car that's sitting on the pole. I expect this to be a top 5 car come Sunday, and I expect it to be a required play for your lineups. He's going to be racing, just keep that point lead, and you're going to see him finish comfortably in the top 5. My guess, unless something crazy happens.
In this perspective too, man, I really didn't talk about this, but I'm right there with you as far as the place differential. But any dominating points that he gets, whether that's fastest laps or laps led, is all just going to be bonus. So the only big thing that we have going on here at Phoenix is obviously there's a lot on the line, and we saw it last year, with Alex Bowman in the '88 filling in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Led a ton of laps, but you saw there towards the end of the race how aggressive that these guys got towards the end of the race. So if any of these guys get caught up in the carnage, it could throw a huge curveball into fantasy lineups for sure.
I couldn't agree more. Which is why my burning rubber pick should surprise no one. It's Kevin Harvick at 10K. Starting 6th, he has 2 wins, 4 top 5s, and 5 top 10s in the last 5 races here. The manufacturer change this year has clearly affected this team, and if I'm being honest, I've probably been a little too bullish on this team all season long, right? Not adjusting as much as I should have for the manufacturer change. However, I think we saw the past few weeks that this car has righted the ship and they've started to really figure out things. And I think that we have a top 5 car in the makings once again with him starting 6th. His spot is secure in the playoffs, which means he gets to race at his favorite track with absolutely no worries. He's just to go out there and race. He can wreck it if he wants, trying to hang it out, getting out there, which could be detrimental to your fantasy lineups. But I think it's going to be the likes of him and my next burning rubber pick that are going to lead laps here this weekend. And I think those are the guys that you're going to have as a staple of your lineup with the place differential plays that we're talking about. But there's a lot of laps here, 312. So keep that in mind. There's enough points to go around dominator-wise that maybe you want a dominator-heavy lineup. What are your thoughts, Liehr, on Harvick?
Yeah, as far as your perspective, though, man, from the dominating perspective of it, I went back and took a look at kind of some of the statistics as far as, okay, if you're starting on the pole, how often have you led laps here at Phoenix? But basically, man, it was hard to find a trend, really. It was kind of a mixed bag of both. There were some, especially within the last 5 races, there's been a mixed bag of, they've only led, less than 10 laps, where other ones like Alex Bowman last year, where they led almost 200 laps at 194. So Blaney sitting on the pole, you're going to be cognizant of him definitely at least leading a few laps. But, I mean, you got Kevin Harvick looking in your mirror. This guy has the most active wins with 8. I mean, this is obviously one of his best tracks. It is his best track, in my opinion. When it comes to, all the tracks that we go to, I definitely think that he's going to be one of multiple dominators you're going to need to win your lineups this weekend. I definitely am going to have exposure on Harvick, and I think he's going to be a high-owned guy for sure, because I definitely concur with you that, the pressure's off this team after winning last week at Texas, and they can just go out there, man, and just, no worries in the world, not have to have that additional pressure on them. They're already there in the Final Four, and it's just game on for them. So everything today, not today, but on Sunday, is just going to be bonus for them. And they're going to want to get those additional points so they can take that into next week at Miami. So look for them to, be pretty aggressive. I feel that they're going to be one of the more aggressive teams this weekend. And so they're going to take a lot of risks because they don't have to. And, they're just going to do it just to take that opportunity to gain those additional points. So I definitely am going to have quite a bit of exposure on Harvick this weekend.
Now, your next burning rubber pick, buddy, is somebody that's going to take risks this weekend because he has to. Go ahead and tell us about this guy.
It's definitely somebody that, has been just a big name within the community as of late with his, obviously interaction at a few weeks ago at Martinsville with Denny Hamlin. But I'm going to be going with Chase Elliott as my other burning rubber pick here. And we're kind of giving you a twofer this week on the burner rubber picks. But the reason I'm going with Chase Elliott, man, is he doesn't have a ton of experience here at Phoenix. But this spring, obviously, he went out and showed that, hey, he can dominate some of the race here. And as he led 106 laps, he is going to be starting from that top 5 position. They're also vying for that final playoff spot. So look for them to be bold and look for them to make some, uncharacteristic calls to get up front and stay up front. A lot of strategy is going to come into play this weekend. And I definitely think that Elliott and the guys in the 24 are going to be one of those that are going to be right there towards the finish to basically try to solidify that 4th spot. But, he's got Hooters on the ride this weekend. And, I always love watching that car on the track. Obviously, too, he was fastest in first practice today as well, which, we usually don't take a ton of stock into. But it is definitely something that says, hey, they do have the ability to have the speed here this weekend. So it's definitely going to be crucial tomorrow for the second practice and the final practice. Pay attention to what that 24 team is. I think that he is also one of the plays where you could get him at a pretty decent ownership percentage as well, because I think a lot of people are going to be on the Blaney and Hamlin train. Also, Truex possibly, but I think a lot of people are going to be with us when it comes to the Harvick play. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I'm definitely liking Chase Elliott this weekend. They even had a great race last weekend at Texas. So look for that team to definitely bring it this weekend and to be kind of a sneaky play for you.
Yeah, I love you, brother, but I couldn't disagree with you more. I don't think he's a sneaky play. I think Chase Elliott is almost always over-owned, and coming off of the last couple weeks, he's going to be super over-owned. And at 9,300, unless he dominates this race, right, he has to be out leading laps and getting fastest laps. He cannot pay off that $9,300 salary. It will not happen. He has to dominate. And the opportunity cost of playing Elliott means you can't play a Harvick, means you can't play a Blaney, means you can't play a Kez or a Rowdy, which is my next burning rubber pick. I think Rowdy at 11-1 is actually the guy that you're more likely to get at the lowest ownership percentage of the season for that quality of driver. He has 4 top 5s in his last 4 races here, with finishes of 4th, 4th, 2nd, and 3rd. He also led 114 laps here in the spring. This is also a chance to get him, like I said, lower owned than I think you would ever get him at this track because of who was qualified and what that does. Instinctually, when you're going to look at lineups this week, you're going to be like, ooh, I can take the lap leader and Blaney. And then I can take a bunch of guys that they've got priced in the 8 and 9 range without really even super punting, right? You have to put one value driver in. And I think a chunk of lineups are going to look exactly like that. And that lineup chunk looks extremely similar until you start going with Rowdies and Harvicks to differentiate, and or even a Truex to cause the salary to move. I think a lot of people are going to be in that middle ground, and that's why you're going to possibly get Rowdy at the lowest ownership percentage for a quality driver in that kind of car. And Truex, I think the same could be said for him, although his track history here is not anything close to what Rowdy's is. Liehr, your thoughts on Rowdy?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be a guy that I'm going to have exposure on. He's obviously had previous races here where he is absolutely dominated with, 114 laps led here in the spring. Last year, he led 75 laps. And then all the way back in 2012, there was a race where he led 237 laps. So, obviously he has shown the ability to lead laps here and be a dominator. I will definitely have exposure on him, but still I'm a little hesitant on having complete major exposure on Kyle Busch this weekend, just because I like other drivers more. But he is definitely a driver I will have exposure on. But I hope you listened to me last week, because obviously Poppa was arguing with me. But the Busch brothers, exactly what they did, said not to play him, and by God, they both didn't perform very well, did they?
Yeah, you were right about that, and I was epically wrong pretty much about all my picks last week. But luckily, I told everybody in the chat that most of my picks that we needed to make adjustments on them.
I'm sorry, are Jimmy Johnson who?
Yeah, my bad.
Sorry, man. I had to rag you after giving me crap last week about my not playing Kez the week before.
Well, fair enough, dude. And just like I was profitable 2 weeks ago, and you weren't. You were profitable last week, and I was not. Like so.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's a week for both of us.
Right, right. Now we both need to combine our powers combined. Clearly, we want to spend a lot of money this week. It's not unusual for us too. Who's one of those value guys that you're looking at to save some money this week, buddy?
So yeah, this might be a surprise for most of you guys, but kind of like we just talked about, with the Bush brothers last week and both going to the garage. I'm actually this week getting on the train of one of those brothers, and high five because I was right about last week, but high five again because I'm going to be right again this week. And Kurt Busch is that guy that I'm talking about. And that 41 team went and qualified themselves this weekend, being back, in the conversation as far as from a fantasy perspective, but went out and qualified 15th, and definitely a great place differential guy here this weekend. And Stewart Haas Racing had a big week with the announcement of the replacement of the number 10 for Danica Patrick, and it's obviously who we thought it was, and it's going to be Eric Amarola. So Smithfield basically following him over there. But his cost this week is only $7,900 for Kurt Busch and the 41 team. And this is the first time that Kurt Busch has been under that 8K mark in quite some time. Specifically, I know for at least 2 months. But it's been a very long time since Kurt Busch has been under that 8K price point. But he's got 29 starts here. He's got 1 win back all the way back in 2005, 7 top 5s and 17 top 10s. He has a nice streak of races here at Phoenix where he's finished 25th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 5th, and 7th since 2014. So some pretty good finishes there for Kurt Busch here. And those are, really strong, except obviously that first one that I talked about, which was this past spring where he finished 25th. But with his salary, and he's the only one of a handful of drivers in that price range and where they start who can actually get you the combination of place differential and possibly some dominator points at a reduced salary this week. So I'm definitely going to be all over Kurt Busch and the number 41 team because I definitely think that obviously we'll wait for tomorrow and see where their practice times are, but they're definitely going to be able to get a top 10 in my opinion. And I will not be shocked or surprised if they get a top 5 this weekend.
Yeah, no, he's racing for a sponsorship deal for next year. I mean, odds are they're going to keep with him and re-sign him. But he still technically doesn't have a ride for next year with Stewart Haas. So I would expect him to be performing very well this week. And like you said, he just has a wonderful track history here. And I think it's the right play, Liehr. I think you're just spot on this play. I think another guy that you just can't be wrong on unless something crazy happened is Sticky Ricky at 7,200 this week. He qualified way too low for Sticky Ricky. He's starting 27th, and this is a team's car, right? That guarantees you basically 10 place differential. And I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to make this play. The only guys remotely around him that you're even interested in my opinion, would be Ty Dillon a little bit lower, but it's not the quality of car Sticky Ricky's in, right? And it just doesn't make sense to save that money to get an inferior car. And we've had issues with Sticky Ricky in the past, but this season he's been a lot of fantasy goodness. I think this is another situation where we are ripe for Sticky Ricky awesomeness.
Yeah, man, I definitely love the starting position of him. And obviously, too, great weekend with the tribute that they're going to have on that car for Robert Yates, it's an awesome paint scheme. I hope everybody checks it out. And obviously, you'll see it on Sunday. But, as far as Sticky Ricky himself, he's definitely got some pretty decent history here with 9 starts. But most of his finishes are, in the teens, except for he did have 3 races in a row where he finished 23rd or higher, but 2 of those were due to a crash. So if he can avoid the wrecks this weekend, I definitely think at where he's starting at, and then also his salary. I mean, it's not a complete huge value like a lower tiered guy like the guys we always talk about in the late $5,000, early $6,000 range. But he's $7,200. But this is a guy that has the potential to get you at least plus 10 place differential points. So that's always going to be somebody I'm going to be cognizant of, and that I'm definitely going to have exposure on. We'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do tomorrow when it comes to practice times. But when it comes down to that type of value, maybe the only other person that I could really see that I would like a little bit more, and plus a little bit more salary relief, would be Chris Buescher. You know, and I know I've been on the C. Busch train for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, but I mean, you just can't get enough of him, especially when they're, you know, actually performing. But other than that, man, you know, you can always go to Benedetto or Castle. But if I have the money, yeah, I'm definitely going to probably be putting it on Sicky Ricky in the number 17 team this weekend.
Yeah, and let's not forget, in the spring here, he went 21st to 4th. Right? This was one of his better races. He seemed to have this track down. So his ability to run through the field is something that we've seen consistently throughout this season, which is why, for the most part, I think I'm all aboard on the Ricky Stenhouse play. I think you're going to see, if you look at my lineups this week, a lot more Ricky than what I would normally have. All right, Liehr. We haven't talked about a couple of drivers that it's bugging me quite a bit. We haven't talked about the front row, and both of those cars looked really good. Blaney at 8,200 is fast on the pole. Hamlin at 8,900 starts second and may actually be the fastest car on the track as he led the first 2 rounds of qualifying. What are your thoughts on these two guys? Are either one of them going to lead a significant amount of laps? And do you think, like I suggested a little bit earlier, that because of both of their prices, that it'll be popular for people to just start with the front row, at least one of them, if not both?
Well, I definitely think it'd be an interesting play if you start both of them, especially since they're both under the $9,000 price point. You know, with Hamlin at 8,900 and Blaney at 8,200, I mean, that gives you a lot of options to do what you want with your lineups. But the race is absolutely a long one. I think we're going to have, definitely with these segments involved and with the amount of risk that's on the line this weekend, I'm going to have exposure on Blaney. I definitely like the way that they've been coming to the track as of late. They've shown up, and the Wood brothers have actually really, you know, come down to the last race to where they can get themselves into the final playoff race next week in Miami. And they're actually really close enough to where they can do it. And I think from a fantasy perspective, yeah, I could see Blaney actually going out and, you know, maybe leading, you know, 75 to 100 laps. As far as Hamlin, he's always been, you know, this isn't a typical short track that we race this weekend. It's one of the, I really do like this track, but it's, you know, one of the oddball shaped ones, you know, kind of a D type of track. But I definitely think that both of these guys have a chance or the ability to lead at least 50 plus more laps. Now, when it comes down to the end of the race, you know, do I think that you know, when it all said and done, will they be enough to pay off to be worth their salary, their value to put on your fantasy teams? I'm probably going to say no. And the reason is because I just think that Harvick is going to be that player this weekend that just goes out and really proves himself this week and gets some more points. And will I have some exposure on one or both of them? Yeah. You know, I do kind of like that Blaney-Harvick combination. But will I be going in that with the majority of my lineups? No. I like more of the guys that we talked about already in the show when it comes to Keselowski. I do like Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, but I'm definitely going to have some more exposure on Blaney than I am on Hamlin.
Yeah, and see, that was the argument I wanted to point out really quick. I think that's going to be what most people do this week. And I think if you believe that Hamlin is the better car, and that because Toyotas don't have the best track history here, and right, because he's sitting second instead of first, and because a lot of people don't like him after what he did to Chase, I think you may be able to get the fastest car on the track cheap and with a low ownership percentage. And that just might be really juicy. And, you know, it comes with a huge risk, like you said. Like Hamlin may lead 50 laps and then may fall back, but that car is going to be around at the end. JGR is going to try to squeeze their second car in. I have that car being really fast this week. Hopefully it holds up in practice, but, you know.
Well, and here's the other thing too, man, is, okay, so It's Wood Brothers, but they're kind of a part racing.
Oh yeah, dude, that's a Penske car, Penske motor.
Yeah. So the other thing too, though, that you need to be conscious of, and I mean conscientious, I didn't really say that correctly, conscientious about, is Joey Logano is another one of the guys that has actually done really, really well here at Phoenix. And he's led more than 50 laps in the last 2 races here. So they're going to be sharing that information with each other, with Keselowski, who obviously has a huge, play into it, but also with Blaney as well. And that's the other kind of dynamic that people are going to have to think about too, is you've got 2 guys basically from the same garage that are going for the same one spot. Mm-hmm. So how much information are they really going to be sharing with each other? Is Logano going to be giving more information to Keselowski's team? I probably think so. Essentially, they're going to be all in the same, setup and same ride. It's just going to be, as far as the crew chiefs, who comes up with a better strategy as to how to get that win or get the most points.
They were looking forward to having access to Blaney's setup for this race. So yeah. I think Blaney has set the standard according to at least the other Penske cars, not just in qualifying, but the way that car was running around the track. So do what you will there. It's time to go to the garage, Liehr. Everybody's favorite segment where we get to talk a little bit of trash on a driver. Maybe we're talking trash on DraftKings. Maybe it's NASCAR. Whoever. Maybe we just want to talk some trash. Liehr, who are you sending to the garage this week, buddy?
Well, brother, it's actually kind of difficult for me to put in perspective on what this team has actually just gone through this year. But I'm definitely sending one of the best talented drivers that we have on the circuit to the garage this week. This season, this team started out so hot, and who I'm talking about the number 42 team in Kyle Larson. So in 2017, they collected 4 wins, making a nice run, obviously, into the playoffs. But this team has absolutely shut it down after getting bumped from the 2017 playoffs at Kansas when they burned up the motor. And this sparked basically a 3 consecutive streak of DNFs for the number 42 team within the last 3 races that we've had, but they finished 39th, 37th, and 37th. But although he had a nice race, here at Phoenix this past spring, where he started 4th and finished 2nd, all the dynamics for Sunday's race are different, basically a different situation, a different story. This team has lost its swagger, its confidence. They don't look like they're into it anymore for the 2017 season. They spent everything that they had at the middle part of the year, and now that we're here in the playoffs, now that they're officially out, I feel like they've just kind of, wrapped it up for the 2017 season. They did go out and actually surprised me a little bit, but they qualified 3rd for Sunday's race, which is, nice for that team. But they're definitely not going to sustain that position for the duration of the race. And his cost this week is $10,200, which is the 3rd highest on the board. In my personal opinion, I think that your money can be best spent in other places this weekend. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be sending Kyle Larson, the 42 team, to the garage. Definitely one hell of a season for that team, for me, man. And it's hard to say this after especially the season it's had, but overqualification for the 42 team this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Although his new paint scheme is pretty cool. The way I'm viewing Kyle Larson's season is very much like the Price is Right game Mountain Climber. Remember that with the little dude like yo. And dude, they like 3 weeks ago they hit the edge of that mountain and fell off. You hear the little guy go, "Ooh, splat." It's a tragic play and tragic to see, man. That car was so good all season long. Now, I think a lot of it's been just random occurrences, but we have seen a bad luck tailspin of epic proportions. And at 10,200, unless you have him dominating this race and shocking everyone, like, more power to you. You'll probably get him at sub 5% this week. Roster him up, man. If not, with Liehr and I, stay away. I've got him going to the garage too, buddy. It's not a play I want to make at all. Another play that I'm not interested in making in any sort of capacity is Paul Menard starting 19th. Now, his price is decent at $6,500, but with him starting 19th, that is literally better than his finishing position in 5 of the last 9 races at Phoenix. He has also logged negative place differential in 5 of the last 9 races at Phoenix. And it's also better than 5 of his last 7 finishes. What that spells out for you is negative points and somebody not paying off their salary. That's not what you need out of a value driver. There are much better alternatives. With a few hundred more dollars, you can get up to Sticky Ricky. For a few hundred less, you can get down to Busher. Those are the plays I would make. Forget starting or playing Paul Menard. He's waiting to get into his Wood Brothers ride next year.
Damn it, man, you stole my thunder, because I was like, well, he's just sitting there with his fingers going like, oh, look at that 21 on the pole this weekend. I get to drive that car next year, 2018. Like, he's just so ready to get out of Richard Childress. It's not even funny. I think Menard is. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him in 2018 in the Wood Brothers car. But I think it's definitely for him. I mean, congratulations for landing in that ride. I mean, you're getting picked over a lot of other, I think in my personal opinion, and probably yours too. I don't want to speak for you, Poppa, but I think we both could concur that there are more talented drivers out there.
Preach, good brother, preach.
Than Paul Menard. But the other aspect or major part of this sport is the sponsorship. And when you got the last name Menard, that comes with a little bit of clout to it. So especially when it comes to sponsorship dollars. So it is what it is, and that's kind of how our world works. But I'm not having any exposure on Paul Menard this weekend. I couldn't have stated it more, any more eloquently than you did as far as his finishing position and where he's starting at this Sunday. So he's definitely not going to be any higher than that. He just definitely his history here at Phoenix doesn't prove any of that, and I don't think he's going to miraculously have anything better this weekand. So
no, and if he randomly does, we're going to bust out our lineups. They're going to be trash.
Yes, that is for sure. But interesting fact, though, is the only time that Paul Menard, he's pretty much driven a Chevy here in his 21 starts, except for 4 races where he drove a Ford. And those 4 races where he drove a Ford, he finished 23rd, 29th, 29th, and 29th. So I think he really likes in the late 29s. And I know he doesn't drive a Ford right now, but he will be. So that's kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen in the future. But I say this, man. The gut in me this weekend is saying that Paul Menard's number 27 is going to finish 27.
There you go. I like it, Liehr. Much like your son, you just like the number you go with. The number you know is what you go with. Like last year, when he was 3, it was always Austin Dillon, and this year it's always Harvick with 4.
Yeah, well, he did win last week, number 4.
Right. So, I mean, he's been right at least once this season.
But this year, man, he's kind of opened up a little bit more about, when I say, well, who do you like for the race? And he'll say, always, unfortunately, because I like the paint scheme. I mean, the drivers, as far as talent, is amazing. But as far as an individual, I always kind of scratch my head and have question marks. But that's the number 18 in Kyle Busch. He always likes the M&M's car.
I like how you're so mean to the best driver in the sport.
Well, I know he's your honeydew hole there, but
he has an attitude because he's good.
Sorry to rain on your parade there.
Oh, come on, man. Like, I'm not the one that owns pajamas of Casey Kane. I'm just saying.
Dude, that's from a long time ago.
And you mention it like every show.
It's not like I wear them to bed now.
I would probably wager that you still wear them to bed.
I do not, sir.
All right, man. It's time for us to get out of here. Go ahead and pump the league one more time, Liehr, and say your goodbyes.
Well, before I do that, there is one other driver that we really didn't discuss that I do want to just get in here real quick. But we did kind of hint at it. But that is my boy, and that is Martin Truex Jr. Obviously, they solidified themselves into the final playoff spot. They just had an absolutely dominating 2017 season. But when it comes to Phoenix, man, this guy is not quite on the up and up. He's got 23 starts here with 0 wins and only 1 top 5 and 7 top 10s. And that team this weekend, obviously they're starting from the 5th position. But I am not going to be rostering any Martin Truex Jr. As I was asking Poppa who he wanted more, and because both of my going to garage picks were Larson and Martin Truex Jr. So I want to be sticking to my guns on that. Make sure I want to include it here on the show this week. Wow. But I think that you'd be making a mistake if you roster any Martin Truex Jr. this weekend.
Bonus double going to the garage. Liehr sending his favorite driver to the garage.
Got to be real with the people, man.
I mean, clearly you're not wearing any Truex pajama pants this weekend.
No, unfortunately not.
I thought that was funny. I like.
I do not own any Truex pajama pants. Sorry.
Maybe that's what I should get you for Christmas for doing the show.
It is coming up, man. Yeah, so definitely appreciate you guys watching this show. Looking forward to this weekend. It should be a fun race. And obviously, to see what happens when it comes to that final playoff spot for the Miami next week and see who wins the championship. But again, basically, we're going to have a video come out of the league for 2018 that we're going to have. So just trying to put another buzz in your ear about the league next year. We only got a handful of comments on it last week, so if you're definitely interested, just let us know so that way we can kind of have an idea of how many that we need to set for the limit for the season next year. So, but hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. And again, thanks to our military for everything. Without your guys' sacrifices, we wouldn't have everything that we have today and all our freedom. So, can't thank you guys enough and appreciate what you do for us. But everybody have a fantastic weekend, and can't wait to go racing on Sunday.
Thanks again for tuning in with us, kids. It's been a long season. This is the second to last episode of the season. We'll have one more for the championship week next weekend. And guys, thanks for joining us in this journey. It's been so much fun. Every season, we love doing this because of you guys and the interaction that we have with and our love of fantasy and NASCAR. So hopefully you've enjoyed the season. Hopefully we made you some money. And with that said, we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Have a great weekend, everybody.